Hey guys, I have another 4v4 here between the Royal Cravates and Napoleonics clan. I haven't recorded anything in a little while, mostly because I just haven't had time and I haven't really had the desire to, but this one looked pretty interesting. It's the second coalition corps on the historical map of Stockach. This one is the 1800 version. There are actually two battles fought on this map, or not this map, this actual location in the real world. The first one in 1799 when Archduke Charles beat Jourdan and the Army of the Rhin in a pretty solid campaign for the Austrians, or actually I guess it's HRE at this point still. The second battle was between Moreau here and I think it's like not Sztaray because he's actually a corps commander. I'll have to look it up sometime. Might leave it in the comments. But anyways, the second battle was in 1800. I believe it was a French victory at that time. Overall, the map's fairly interesting. I'll go over that in a second after I go over the corps. For the French, we do have Moreau, Desaix, Suzanne, and over here is Napoleon. Obviously, the Rhin corps are Suzanne and Moreau. Both of those actually fought, I believe, at an 1800 battle. And then Desaix and Bonaparte obviously were part of Marengo and would not have been here. On the coalition side, they have Nauendorf up front. Nauendorf was historically like a cavalry commander. His corps is fairly interesting. It has a lot of heavy cav available to it, okay-ish infantry, and a lot of grenadiers. So he makes a really good reserve army. York here. Obviously, York was also not fighting in the middle of Germany, but he's here now. This army has a mixture of usually Russians and British infantry as part of the Helder expedition. In the back is Souvorov's Italian army, also probably not here in the battle. And then in the final reserve is Sztaray's army. I'm probably mispronouncing it. It's a Hungarian name, and I'm barely able to pronounce English names. His army's fairly interesting. It has the Bavarians, I think the Württemberg infantry, and then a lot of excellent hussars. He's really like both of the 10-pointers for the second coalition side are fairly interesting because they do center around like very good light cav play. The infantry is generally okay, but it's small and cheap, but with good stats, especially the Bavarians for Sztaray. Meanwhile, Moreau, fairly large infantry. I think he brought the Terribles. Yeah, and Homme de Fer. So two very good battalions, or regiments in this case. Suzanne is more of the kind of massy, chunky Rhin infantry. He's got competent amounts of cav, one good scout. Moreau basically spent all of his money on his infantry and this big battery of guns. The carabiniers are quite good. And then Desaix, usually he only gets... You basically pick the brigade with the incomparable, and then these really good carabiniers that have like 20 melee attack or something like that. If you see these skirmishers, they will probably beat your light cav in melee. And then Napoleon's over here. His army is always kind of an interesting one to try and get 12 points out of. A lot of those points are his stars, and then his speed. And then he has excellent cav if he can support it. His light cav, though, while you can bring a lot of it, tend to be outclassed by the Austrians. So it is kind of difficult to win cav engagements with him. The best benefit of him is his speed and overall morale melee. So if you can get into combat or flank and pressure the enemy, that's always a good option. In terms of spawns, you notice that the French have this sort of arcing shape, whereas you have two forward deployed armies here, and then two coalition armies coming up either along this road, or they can split off here and push this 2-pointer over here at Reitslag. Probably butchered that as well. Stockach is usually where the main defense happens, and you usually hold these hills as the coalition. If you want to be fairly forward deployed, that sort of lets you command the heights above Stockach. Otherwise, you hold this side of the river and wait for your allies to kind of push on this side. Because you know that there's a full army on your left, it's probably likely that Nauendorf is going to hold the city. You can see that he has plenty of grenadiers. Austrian Gruns are good for shooting in this coalition. They're small. They have okay stats, but in terms of melee, but the French stats are generally better in melee. And because of their size and your lack of stars and things like that, they will lose to French lines of equal size. The benefit is they're fairly affordable. And it doesn't look like they have a ton of scout cav over here. Or the coalition just don't really care about scouting on this side, which would be kind of odd knowing that Napoleon is on your flank. If you're going to hold the town, you want to be able to at least know where they're going to be pushing from, so you'd want scout cav somewhere around here, probably around here, to get a good screen to know where the enemy's going to go. You have two very fast armies essentially coming up with Desaix and Napoleon, and then the big mass armies on the flanks over here. Souvorov's Cossack. If you have Cossacks with Souvorov, then it means that you've probably skipped on a lot of the infantry, just because of the cost. Same if you see like Souvorov guns, then you know that they probably haven't gone all in on the grenadiers and melee infantry and things like that. Looks like Napoleon's going to come through the woods and maybe attack along this river line at Stockach, while Desaix comes in from the front, and Moreau is going to try and take these heights. A York Cossack. Remember, he has the Russians, so he does get some affordable light cav there. So Nauendorf's heavy cav reserve. They have the benefit of having actual armored heavies, unlike most of the French corps in this period. The cuirassiers are actual cuirassiers and they're big. Their morale is where they kind of falter, but you can bring a lot of them for fairly affordable prices. And the French don't actually have as many squares in this corps, and can be shocked. So that would be the benefit. The French almost have like coalition traits in the way that they're big, chunky armies, generally somewhat slow, and lack like a, I don't know how to describe it, but overall like maybe less stars than what you would normally expect, except for the Italian corps. That's going to be Sztaray's light cav. I don't remember which hussar is the light blue, but it's dangerous. Austrian guns, or maybe British guns right there. Didn't get to see which hussars that is. So still big heavy cav reserve. It is kind of strange to me to position Nauendorf here because his heavy cav reserve is going to be so far forward. You'd almost have wanted Sztaray up front because his light cav could help screen the frontage, and then maybe have Nauendorf on this position, both of them up front, because Souvorov is quick enough to come up, and York would make a good replacement filler of infantry that you can buy time with your cavalry. Just a personal opinion. There's more than one way to obviously play, and I just would be afraid of having heavy cav up front and center early on in the game, maybe. Some more hussars rushing in behind the French. This is where Suzanne has kind of dropped the ball with his light cav. Somehow, an entire huge Austrian light has snuck around the rear of Suzanne's entire army and might kill his general. So, when you charge with Cav, you should probably not charge through your own general. He actually killed 6 models of his own general because they basically began their charge animation and ran over their friendly unit. There's more. I think these are the Ott with the blue hats and the green and red uniforms. Also quite good. I could be wrong though. Like I said, I'm not a super uniform nerd, so it's hard for me to guess all of them. If I was Suzanne right now, I'd be very nervous seeing this amount of Austrian excellent light cav surrounding you at this point. So double of those. 2 of these here, and then 1 more behind. So the thing with Sztaray and Melas is that you almost can't spend all of your money on infantry alone. You have to buy all of these very expensive cav, but that's actually your strength, is having these large, excellent light cav to kind of bully and abuse the French. This is a pretty good catch here from the and this is a strong position for coalition. Souvorov has arrived already. He's fast. It looks like he mostly went with an infantry build though, just off of what we can see here. There is grenadiers, at least 4 of them, so he probably brought the 1st Division's grenadiers, or maybe like the Moskva and then the 2nd Division of infantry. Napoleon's still a little apprehensive over here. They have good cav containment, so I'm not sure where their plan is to go from over here. He doesn't have guns, so he's going to have to do maneuver. He has probably cav advantage and point advantage. Over here, Suzanne has survived the sort of cav encirclement, and they are actually shooting the Brits out of this house. I think this is like one of those converged grenadier regiments that are small for this faction. He has taken quite a few casualties for it, but they were able to shoot him out of the house. Carabiniers. So Souvorov's infantry is decent, but I tend to not prioritize it. Let your allies bring the mass. Nice cav engagement over here. Managed to rout this cav. Nauendorf's light dragoons thinking about coming to help, but I mean by that time it's too late. And then the Hollandaise are going to probably keep walking this cav off because it will come back if you're not careful with that amount of numbers left. Heavy cav still in the center, so we have the big heavy cav reserves here. The Imperial is more or less holding these heights. Again, they're still in a bit of a pickle over here, I think. If Sztaray actually pushes with his light cav, he might be able to overrun Suzanne over here. I mean, he has, what, 3 squares, and some okay-ish cav. Most of the French light cav for this period is really bad, honestly. And they're outclassed by the Austrian lights in every single way. Napoleon is still mostly unspotted, but they can see him here. Yeah, it does look like that cav's not going to come back now. Big Austrian battery. It's okay positioning for what it is, but you see how the French are able to actually just walk away from it around this way, the trees are going to block it, and you'd be shooting actually uphill into trees from this spot. So it's one of those, it looks pretty good on paper, maybe not as great in application. So we still have seen, more or less, the French are going to try and stretch out this way into a J-hook. Coalition have internal lines still. Nauendorf holding this corner. York is here. Souvorov is in reserve somewhere here. And then we know that Sztaray's cav is over here. Not sure where his infantry is. It's probably near his gen, if we had to guess. And it does look like Souvorov is going to come this direction now, to where Sztaray's gen is, and they might try to make a push on this side of the map. At least that's how it's telegraphing. No main attack by the Imperials on Stockach itself, which is probably good for them. It's a difficult town to attack, especially with all the streets and things like that. And you're going to be crossing a river, and these guns will actually hit you if you actually push to this crest of this hill, and York is in the background, and things along those lines. Some nice hits with the Homme de Fer. So these units are still spotted, which means there is Austrian light cav somewhere behind, probably like right around here, since these are not spotted. We just saw the ones moving away from there, so we know that there's at least one spotting from there. The French have a fairly large 8-pounder battery here, and he's direct targeting the York battery that's setting up here to try and make sure that the coalition can't get any guns up. Napoleon has walked into the Hungarians, it looks like. Honestly, I don't think any of these units could square, so having your dragoons close by would probably be helpful. Looks like Moreau was thinking about pushing forward, and then they saw Souvorov's infantry over here. Light cav is repositioning again. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of having big, expensive light cav all the way on the flank unsupported, unless you're actually planning on trying to like win or harass cav engagements. It's actually quite difficult to use light cav, I think, in general in this version. But that's a tale for another time. I have really difficult time using full light cav armies. York getting a pretty good flank here on Moreau. This is Sztaray's infantry, the Bavarians. Excellent division for the price. Somewhat concerning that they aren't reacting to the fact that there's an entire Bonaparte army coming around their flank. But at the same time, the French are somewhat exposed over here on this flank. Souvorov is doing a wide attack, which is what you kind of want to do with him. He's an attacking maneuver infantry corps par excellence. Honestly, there's very few corps in the mod that can match a well-managed Souvorov. He has stars, melee, speed, and stats. Some of my favorite units are in Souvorov's corps for this period. Bonaparte should probably be able to just walk through this. These Hungarians are worth like nothing. And if you got into melee and just kept moving instead of shooting at them, you could just walk through them. So this is where you want York is within range of your big artillery batteries. Try to wear him down using artillery and things like that, and then get in there with into melee and such with him.
Mic off. Mic on.
So the Austrian light cav is still moving around on these flanks. Suzanne has squares and dragoons over here. And it looks like Desaix is repositioned from here in front of Stockach and coming to support the left flank of the Army of the Rin. Lots of good squares, good shooting. That'll be able to more or less negate any light cav engagement. So right now, we have Souvorov here with Sztaray's light cav trying to push around this way. A movement from Desaix across. Suzanne here in the center around this position. Moreau here. And then Napoleon pushing along this corner. Sztaray's reserves here. York engaging in a line fight, which is exactly what he wants, with a nice river to keep away the enemy. Souvorov's Grins are going this direction, but his infantry is going this direction. Suzanne pulling back in front of Souvorov's advance. This is more or less acknowledging the fact that Souvorov's corps is very, very good. You gotta give it the respect it deserves as the 9-pointer. Even in mediocre hands, it will still put a hurt on you if you get into melee with it. That being said, he did go for a very wide Souvorov. Not personally my favorite. I prefer like taking all the grenadiers and the light infantry and having just the ability to bowl through lines.
Mic off. Mic on.
Nauendorf's heavy cav is here to support Souvorov's advance.
Sir,
more of his heavy cav is over here.
Our general is under attack.
And Napoleon needs to be pressing fully. At this point, there's basically half of a 9-pointer in front of him. And not even the best parts of his 9-pointer. Most of the money is spent on this heavy cav here. So the French were able to read the attack pretty well and pulled back to a more stable, I guess you could say, line. They did give up the lock position, but honestly, if Souvorov had attacked here, they probably would have just melted Suzanne's infantry. A nice cav engagement over here. It looks like maybe Nauendorf wasn't paying attention as much on this corner while he was microing other units elsewhere. That's the difficulty of splitting your army and trying to be a reserve that's on multiple fronts.
Mic off. Mic on.
The coalition have light cav actually behind the French now on this corner. And they've made the French commit all of their cav to this corner over here. So there's not much to stop a Nauendorf heavy charge in the middle. And Moreau's not trading super well against York here, either due to musket bug or whatever else, also because York has excellent shooters. Even though you have mass on him, you just can't really sit in a line fight forever. The guns are helping, but, you know, look how many shots these guys have done in the same time span as Moreau's infantry. You know, it starts to add up. Souvorov's Grins are still over here. This is actually probably the worst matchup that you could ask for Souvorov, which is Desaix's infantry, because it's all just as fast as you. And it has decent stats. Like, the incomparable are decent in melee. I think they have like 18 or 19 melee attack, with high reload and things along those lines. Plus you have grenadiers and other stuff to support it. And you're fast. So having the speed and ability to match Souvorov with the amount of stars and good morale makes it difficult for Souvorov to deal with. So, pretty well telegraphed attack here. Imperial seem to be responding, but we'll see.
Mic off. Mic on.
Somewhat unlucky that there are quite a few squares here, and he's attacking into Homme de Fer. Is the Bavarians coming up? A nice road for making the attack down, which will be helpful for getting these somewhat slow C1s. The French somewhat can smell that they can maybe make it a counterattack at the same time that they're being attacked.
Mic off. Mic on.
This is a nice counterattack by the Carabiniers here. And this is where you kind of wish you had Souvorov's grunts. Souvorov's most expensive part of his army is over here, and that's the part that you want to be getting into melee with, and instead it's his regular lines that are doing the work. Just checking in. It looks like Bonaparte was able to sneak some light cav around and kill some of the coalition guns during the main attack. I don't want to miss too much. Moreau is fully engaged with the Brits here, but also partially here. Desaix is keeping the 10-pointers cav in check. The Grenadiers have still not been committed, and there's still quite a bit of reserves here for Souvorov. They're not trading too badly overall. It's not the breakthrough that I think they wanted, which is kind of hard to get this early in the game, especially with Nauendorf's just okay heavies.
Our men are running.
You can see here that Souvorov's infantry is not trading great against the infantry here. It's a little bit different against the Brits, who are absolutely shredding, even shooting uphill. They're putting in excellent damage against Moreau. Bonaparte needs to be attacking completely. I mean, almost all of the coalition's power is right here, and he's 12 points, being held up by Nauendorf's partial army that's more or less barely supported. He is getting into melee here. This is a bit confusing what's going on, but there's, I think, 3 different players at least, trying to detangle their armies, especially when you have tired heavies and things along those lines. Moreau is honestly in a bad position at this point. It's very dicey. There's too much UK infantry left, and there's a lot of attacking power here. Not quite managing his infantry just yet. And this is also kind of mismanaged. I think this is also the problem of having a light cav corps that's spread out across the map, and you have to also use your infantry. A nice counterattack here. That's more or less the weight of heavy cav. He targeted this unit squared. I wouldn't consider that a cross. The UK are shooting into trees and still winning in this fight. If anything, Moreau probably should just march out and meet them in melee instead. He'd be charging downhill out of trees. looks like his carbineers aren't gonna make it in time to save his guns. Nice sneaky move there by Helder. This infantry is collapsing over here.
My God. My God.
Dang, missed a little bit of this over here. Nice coordinated attack with light cav. But again, this is Souvorov's best infantry and grenadiers. And they are barely winning against the incomparable.
Our men are running, sir.
If anything, they traded up, because remember this is only 6-pointer, and he was able to beat off this entire Souvorov attack on this flank with some decent casualties to stack up against it. Moreau is really in a dangerous position here. Coalition can probably sense that they might be able to break through here. I mean, he keeps extending and extending. There's light cav in his rear. Maybe that was forgotten about. Napoleon is trying to grind out Nauendorf's grenadiers. I personally would probably just melee them at this point. You have Napoleon.
Our men are running, sir.
Suzanne is 1 though, and so is Desaix. The Austrian light cav, or sorry, HRE light cav has more or less been neutralized. As long as the French cav stays alive, the Austrian lights have not been able to do much. Here comes another heavy cav charge. This one's uphill. Like I said, this is probably exactly where I would also have made this attack. The timing is really good on it overall. Unfortunate that he hits another square. Moreau is mostly broken. But York is not holding as well as it looks. Some of these units are starting to turn the other way. Bonaparte has finally made it into melee over here against what's left of Nauendorf holding the town, while also coming to pressure the rear of the coalition armies. There still is Austrian light cav on this corner.
Our men are running, sir.
The Highlanders trying to make something happen in melee. This is a bit dangerous of a play. He didn't go through with it. Moreau countercharging down the hill, like I said, he should. Nice catch here. This is a little bit dicey coming across like this. You technically cross a lot of your own infantry to do it. His infantry's pulling away this way. This unit wasn't, and then he crossed cav this direction. It's not that egregious in this case, but it could have been a little cleaner. He ultimately loses all of it anyways. Another charge here. And Suzanne going in with cav against Souvorov. I'm not sure what the plan is here. This is like the 4th charge that this square has received by cav. Napoleon has one over here. It's taken a while, but he's finally pushed Nauendorf off, and he's now commanding these heights back here. A little bit risky with his cav, especially since there's so much going on back behind.
Mic off. Mic on.
It does look like Moreau has stabilized. That light cav behind was seen and sent off by the Carabiniers. Another Dragoon. Suvorov's Grins basically didn't get to do much in this game. In my opinion, Suvorov, like if you had to have like a carry army, quote unquote, Suvorov is it for the Second Coalition. He's the one that will break the French armies. You just have to support him and make the attack happen. Not really sure what's going on here with the HRE Cav. Looks like a lot of people trying to give different orders. Not all of his Cav belongs to one person either. The heavy Cav is Nauendorf, and the light Cav is still Sztaray.
Mic off. Mic on.
Overall, though, the coalition attack is collapsed. Moreau survived. Yeah, I don't know where they're charging here. It looks like this one is trying to move that way. This one's charging this direction. There's grenadiers here. This light cav is trying to run away. There's a French cav in here, I think, attacking this UK infantry here. Just a bit of a mess. This is what happens when you have too many players in one spot.
Our men are running, sir.
Gets a little borderline blobby. You can see there's grenadiers, cav on top of each other. I don't know where the orders are for these units. I think the heavy cav is trying to retreat. This light cav is trying to move somewhere else, and it's blocking the heavy cav while the grenadiers are trying to go forward. It ends up in this entangled blob though, so definitely could be cleaner. Know where your units are, more or less, and try not to overlap them. York is trying to fight a rearguard. I don't know why Napoleon doesn't just advance and annihilate him. Napoleon's been kind of timid the entire game, facing significantly lower points, and engaging them in a line fight rather than just using your speed and maneuver to get through them. Not much left for Souvorov, just some of his infantry. Yeah, so you can see the net end effect of where the cav was supposed to be going, I think, based on where they are now. The light cav was trying to come across this way, one heavy cav was trying to retreat, another heavy cav trying to retreat this way, and one trying to go forward, with two grenadiers also trying to go forward. It might be the pathfinding on this map, I don't know, but it's definitely something that could be cleaner. It ultimately benefited the Imperial, who were able to shoot all of the cav and the grenadiers throughout the entire time. Nice charge on this. This unit could actually square, but I don't think he realized it. Ooh, a little bit of fin, but it is cav running uphill.
Sir, and must rest a while.
And it happened right on contact, so it's kind of a wash. Unit does square. I don't even know if it has enough men to hold the square. Bonaparte's still kind of in this odd shootout with York. Suzanne could probably just generic advance. A little bit of a last gasp attack from Souvorov and Sztaray's light cav. There still is this light cav back here. When you have like 1,000 or 1,200 gold light cav, and it's behind enemy lines most of the game, it has to be gaining its value. In this case, it didn't really. It's too easy to forget the micro on it, especially when you're all over the map. That unit probably could have changed the game if he had used it to rear charge Moreau when he was here and York was pushing up this way and there was heavy cav coming in. That light cav could have made the difference, but it was forgotten about. Overall, an interesting game. The coalition attack I think was a good one overall. It just ran out of steam as it got further and further along. They couldn't break the French. Souvorov's attack was a little bit botched in my opinion. His grenadiers were nowhere to be found for the main attack. And his build kind of perplexes me for Souvorov. It's not a terrible build or anything like that. It's just I think there's better ways to get more value out of his infantry and things along those lines. Let your allies bring infantry mass, you be a hammer type of thing. I mean, you can see how bloody this hill fight was for Moreau. Moreau honestly was at the breaking point multiple times, but the coalition just didn't have quite enough to finish him. They had the heavy cav there, and the timing was pretty decent. They just got really unlucky with some of the charges, ended up being into squares, or like... Sorry.
Mic off. Mic on.
Sorry, allergies this season. Into like quality Moreau infantry, and Moreau has enough stars to back it up. Suzanne was probably the juicier target for the heavy cav. Not a lot of squares there, and his infantry is generally a little bit weaker. Nice rear charge here. Not sure what's going on here. I think the Carabiniers were meleeing the light cav, and the light cav was trying to run away, but they're just as fast as like horses almost in the charge. This is the difficulty of having light cav supremacy, is that one square can wipe out like 20 models off of your light cav. Anyways, interesting battle overall. It's more or less wrapped at this point. Imperial are definitely going to be able to carry out the remainder of whatever's left of the coalition army here in Stockach, and Desaix should be able to wipe out the remainder here. I think Bonaparte could have been a little bit more aggressive. Coalition maybe not as aggressive, but they didn't have any guns to really back themselves up. Odd that they let Bonaparte go more or less unchecked in their rear while they try to push center here. If you don't hold this ground at the beginning, there's I don't really understand the point of pressuring it at this point. Souvorov probably could have come over here and helped defeat and isolated Bonaparte, and the heavy cav was already here. Let the light cav keep screening and containing the French on this direction, and then Moreau would be over here, and he would have to make an attack forward into York on a defensive position behind a river. So, in this case, maybe better to play the coalition a little bit more defensively, counterattack Napoleon. But again, easier to see in hindsight. That's also kind of why it's important to know your enemy's deployment zones. If they knew that Napoleon was isolated over here and they could wipe out a 12-pointer right off the bat, maybe they don't go after the bulk of the remaining Imperial armies and concentrate a 12-pointer while defensively holding this. You saw how much damage York was able to do to Moreau, and that was with Moreau on the defensive and York on the offensive. If the roles were reversed and York has to pressure through York, and his guns are way back here, and York's on a defensive line in this trees, I think it would have probably been able to break Moreau, and then you counterattack with your heavy cav and things along those lines. Overall, though, pretty clean play from both sides, and an interesting battle, I think, overall. I'll go and fast forward to the end because there's not much else to see except them killing a couple generals. But again, thanks for watching, and I will try to start working on the beginner's guide again. I want to do the cavalry one. Everyone asks for cavalry guide. It's really difficult because cav is really difficult, and I need to be able to break it into parts that make sense to be able to actually give you guys good information. It's one of the most gamer aspects of the mod, so we'll see how it goes. But thank you again for watching, and hopefully we'll have another review for you later on. Looks like Souvorov snuck this house here.
We have taken a building, sir.
With a grenadier, no less.
Mic off. Mic
Oh,
on.
this one actually has the end screen somehow built in. I don't know how they did that on this one, but you can see the overall stats here. Casual, I think, was Sztaray and Arjens, Nauendorf, and then Pius was Souvorov, Duke BobRoss for York. BringBack, I know, was the 11-point Moreau. Tet was, I believe, Napoleon. And then, judging by numbers, Jackal probably was Suzanne, and Stanners was Desaix, but I'll double check that and post it in the comments if I had anything that was wrong. Overall, though, the kills about equal. Not too much farming. Imperial armies slightly bigger, maybe, but overall, fairly small armies for both sides. Anyways, thanks again.